Namaste and welcome to the Vedanta Society of Greater Houston and our Bhagavad Gita class. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Grathitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Ritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Amba Tvam Anusandadhami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshinim Vasudeva Sutan Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yatkripa Tamaham Vande Paramananda Madhavam. Om, O Mother Bhagavad Gita, we meditate on you who were made known to Partha, Arjuna, by the Lord Narayana himself. You who were included in the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa. You, the goddess who rains down the nectar of Advaita, non-dualism, in 18 chapters. You, the destroyer of relative existence. We worship Krishna, world teacher, the son of Vasudeva, the supreme delight of his mother Devaki, and the destroyer of the demons Kamsa and Chanura. We adore that supremely blissful Madhava, by whose grace the mute are made eloquent and the lame are enabled to cross over mountains. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. Om peace, peace, peace be unto us all. So we will continue where we left off last time, and that is we are in chapter 17, verse 5 and 6, the two verses which go together, which is why we left off after verse 4 last time. And so this chapter is on the three types of faith, three kinds of faith. That is sattvic faith, Rajasic faith, and Tamasic faith, according to the characteristics of the three gunas. The three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. Sattva, the quality of purity, transparency, equanimity, tranquility, clarity, etc. Rajas, the quality of passion, action and reaction, strong desire, strong likes and dislikes, ostentation, etc. And then tamas, destructive, dark, ignorant, lazy, etc. These three qualities. So as you know, if you've followed this class or other studies in Vedanta, they are the constituents which make up the nature of everything. Everything in this world is made of these three constituents, these three qualities, which are not really qualities. They're more like substances. That is, they are the stuff out of which this universe is made: sattva, rajas, and tamas. And so they are the root materials of prakriti. So not just that a thing has sattvic qualities or whatever, but they're like the constituents of nature itself. So in the beginning of this chapter, then Arjuna, as he often does at the beginning of a chapter, that's what often makes a chapter, he begins with a question, because in the end of the 16th chapter, Sri Krishna had said, and I'll just read the English to catch us up, get us up to speed with where we're to start. Therefore, the scripture is your authority, O Arjuna, in this matter of determining what is to be done and what is not to be done. That is, we learn how I should act, what I should do, what I shouldn't do by the scripture. After understanding actions as presented by scriptural injunctions, you ought to perform your duties. And so then in the beginning of chapter 17, that is the very next verse, Arjuna asks, O Krishna, what is the steadfastness? So what is the conviction, the shraddha, the faith? However, of those who imbued with faith, adore by ignoring the instructions of the scriptures. Is it born of sattva or rajas or tamas? And again, the construction in English is very difficult because they were trying to get it close to the Sanskrit, which doesn't work very well in English. The Sanskrit structure of this verse doesn't work well in English. But the idea is, O Krishna, those who have faith and who worship with faith, but they don't have faith in the scriptures. That is, they don't know the scriptures. They don't follow the scriptural injunctions. But they have faith in something. They're following a process of worship. They're worshiping sincerely, but without following the scriptural injunctions of what nature is their faith. Is it sattvic faith? Is it rajasic faith? Is it tamasic faith? So the question is a good one, because the followers of every religion tend to think that those who follow religion as I do, they follow it properly. And so we would say, in terms of the gunas, they are sattvic worshippers because they do it the right way, which is the way that my scriptures and my tradition says you should do it. But Arjuna is asking about those who are outside of the scriptural tradition, who don't know it, or who perhaps follow a different scriptural tradition. What about them? Because remember, the Vedic peoples were not isolated. They were in contact with other civilizations in the general region, in Central Asia and in the Himalayan regions and elsewhere. And so the Vedic peoples were very much aware of other civilizations and the fact that they followed different traditions. So these people who may be sincere and do worship sincerely, but what is the nature of their faith? So then Sri Krishna begins his answer by saying that faith of embodied beings, that is, that faith of human beings, we are embodied, and so that means us, that faith of humans which is born of their own nature is verily threefold, possessed of sattva, of rajas, and of tamas. Hear about it. And so he says that those who have faith born of their own nature, meaning faith not from the scriptures and not based on the scriptures, but faith according to their own nature. They also, like everyone else, they may be sattvic, they may be rajasic, they may be tamasic. And so that's another statement of the general liberality of the Gita and of the larger Hindu tradition. There were sects within Hinduism which became narrow, just as in all religions you find people that become narrow. But the general trend of Hindu religion was always highly liberal. And so that you see. So now we'll skip over to verse 4, which is where we ended last time. Those having sattva worship the gods. Those having rajas worship the demigods. That is, the celestial beings, but much lower than the actual gods. Those who worship the gods, they are sattvic because they're worshiping the highest beings. That is, God, who manifests in different gods and goddesses. But those who are rajasic, because they want the things of this world, they worship lower beings, celestial beings, not demons, but celestial beings, because there you get the good things of the earth. So they, in Hindu terms, and terms that would have been applicable here, they worship gods like the god of wealth, the god of love, that is amorous love, erotic love, Kamadeva. So they worship the god of amorous love. They worship the god of wealth and so forth, because they want objects of enjoyment. And then the tamasic people, those of dark and destructive nature, ignorant, low-minded people, they worship demonic beings and ghosts. They're always interested in ghosts. They make offerings to ghosts and to demons in their ignorance. And so then now we come to verses 5 and 6, which taken together, I'll chant both of them and then we'll go through them because they form one sentence. Ashastra vihitam ghoram tapyante ye tapo janaha dambhahankara samyuktaha kamaraga balandvitaha karshayanta sharirastham bhuta gramam machetasam mam chaivanta sharirastham tan vidyasura nischayan. So he says that those people who are shastra vihitam, or let's see, those people who are janaha, who are dambhahankara samyukta, who are completely absorbed in dambha, that is ostentatious display of religion. Everything they do is ostentatious, and ahankara, who are filled with egotism. I am a religious person. I am a righteous person. I am to be respected because I'm such a religious person. I give wealth to the temples and I do this and I do that. I'm so important that people should bow before me and get out of my way. So that those who are completely absorbed in egotism and dambha, religious ostentation, putting all kinds of signs all over their bodies and doing their japa in front of everyone so that everyone sees them doing japa, and making sure that people are watching when they sit for meditation, making sure people are watching when they give something in charity, religious charity, going to the temple or something. They don't give out of kindness or something, but they give for ostentation. So these people who shastra vihitam ghoram tapo tapyante, who perform terrible austerities, that is severe austerities, which are not prescribed by the scriptures. That is, in the scriptures, austerities are prescribed, but the austerities which are prescribed in the scriptures are those which help you to concentrate the mind and which are not meant to exhaust your or to punish the senses or the body. They're not meant for punishment at all. They're meant, and they're not meant for display either. Those austerities, like occasional fasting, occasional vigil, staying up Shivaratri in order to worship Shiva, concentrating the mind, that type of tapasya, doing japa for a number of hours if you have built up the strength to do that. Such tapasya is recommended in the scriptures, but not that which is ostentatious or that which is severe. So those who are kama raga balanvitaha, who are endowed with the strength to, who are endowed with attachment to desire, or how does he put it here? Because there are two ways of interpreting this. Attachment to the desired, who have the power to endure the suffering which results from the attachment to desired objects. That's from that one little short Sanskrit phrase, kama raga balanvitaha. What it literally means is kama, desire, raga, attachment, bala, power or strength, and anvita, those who are endowed with. But out of that, you have to make sense, the relationship between the words, which is not given in the compound itself. And so what he does here is, and this is quite legitimate, is he says, who are possessed of the power to endure suffering which results from their attachment to the desired objects, the kama. So all of that comes out of that one little phrase of several syllables. So those persons who, being fully identified with religious ostentation, dambhahankara samyukta, and pride, ahankara, and being possessed of the power to endure suffering which results from their attachment to the desired objects, kama raga balanvitaha, undertake severe austerities not sanctioned in the scriptures, ashastra vihitam ghoram tapo tapyante. So those people who do all of this. And then verse 6 goes on the sentence, karshayanta sharirastam bhutagramam achetasaha mam chaivanta sharirastam tan vidyasura nischayan. So that, again, it's a very complex construction, which means, and who, being non-discriminating, emaciate the aggregate of the elements in the body, bhuta gramam achetasaha, who emaciate the aggregate of the elements in the body, karshayanta sharirastam bhuta gramam achetasaha, and verily me as well who reside in the body, mam chaivanta sharirastam, and me who indeed am in the body, tan vidhi asura nischayan, know them to be possessed of a demonic conviction or faith. So again, that's a lot, I know. And so let me go over that 6th verse again, the running translation. And who, being non-discriminating, emaciate the aggregate of the elements in the body, and verily emaciate me as well, who reside in the body, know them to be possessed of a demonic conviction. So here, really, it seems to me, is not what Madhusudana says, but he's combining the Rajasic and the Tamasic together and saying that both of them are demonic. That previously he spoke about the Sattvic. In verse 4, he had talked about the Sattvic worship of the gods, though, and then the Rajasic and the Tamasic, but he begins with the Sattvic. But here he's talking about, remember in the previous chapter, chapter 16, it was about the divine and the discrimination between the divine and the demonic qualities in people. Daivasura sampad vibhaga yogo nama shodashodhyaya. The 16th chapter, known as the chapter on the discrimination of the division between divine and demonic qualities. Meaning as manifested in human behavior. Those who manifest divine qualities as distinguished from those who manifest demonic qualities. So here in verses 5 and 6, he's combining the Rajasic and the Tamasic as demonic. So how is he doing that? In the first, in verse 5, said those persons who, being fully identified with religious ostentation and pride, that means people who are Rajasic. They're full of religious ostentation and pride. They want everyone to see them. And being possessed of the power to endure suffering which results from their attachment to the desired objects. That also is rajas. They are so strongly attached to the desired objects that they are willing to undergo suffering in order to get those objects. They think that by performing severe austerities, along with ostentation so everyone sees what I'm doing, by doing these severe austerities, it will both impress people and it will impress the higher beings, the god of wealth and the god of lust, and that they will give me the objects of my desire. So they undertake severe austerities that are not sanctioned in the scriptures, because again, the scriptures tell of austerities which are sattvic in nature, which are meant to calm the mind, to bring a sense of self-control, to bring clarity of mind, and to give you energy and power to go forward in spiritual life. That's the whole purpose of austerity. It's not, as you find in the Western tradition in Christianity, the idea of mortification of the flesh. That's not what austerity means. The English term asceticism, that comes from a Greek root, which refers to the training that athletes underwent to gain the strength to compete in athletic events, like in the Olympic events. And so that was the origin of the idea of asceticism. And so that is much closer, it's not the same, but it's much closer to the Hindu idea of tapasya, where you're trying to, here you're not doing it for athletic purposes, of course, you're doing it for spiritual purposes. But the idea is a training that you put yourself through in order to gain the power of self-control. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that there are different levels of enjoyment. And so he would say the basest level, the lowest level, which is where the vast majority of humanity is enjoyment of sense objects. That's all most people know, the great majority, even religious people. That's where they live, at the realm of the enjoyment of the senses. That's all they know, all that they want. And if they are religious, they think of heaven as a place where they will go and enjoy even more. Here they recognize, if they're religious, they recognize that in this life we get some enjoyment, but there's a lot of suffering. But after death, I'll go to a place where the suffering is gone. I can eat delicious food and there'll be no stomachache. I can carouse and there'll be no reaction from it. I can have all types of refined enjoyments that are pleasing with no after effects. And so that's the idea of heaven for most people. So Vishayananda is the lowest level of enjoyment of the senses. Above that comes some Yamananda, the enjoyment of self-control. And that is an actual enjoyment. How? When you begin to attain some self-control, you feel a sense of self-mastery. Again, I'm not talking about egotistical self-mastery that you go around and show everybody that you can control yourself. No, an internal sense, purely internal, that comes as the mind becomes more sattvic. As you have a sense of self-control, you feel that you're not a slave of your senses anymore. You have the power to say no to your appetites. So that brings a much superior, a much higher sense of joy and satisfaction than just enjoyment of the senses. Then there is bhajanananda, the joy that comes from the worship of God, which includes bhajan, singing devotional hymns. But bhajana originally means just worship. And bhajan came to mean devotional songs in common parlance, but so both are included in the same thing. You get the joy of worship. When the mind, in the beginning, worship may be something you force yourself to do, and you may get a little something from it, but it's mainly work. But a time comes when you make offerings, you do worship, and you feel great joy coming from that. You feel a connection to something which is higher and vaster, God, of course, but you may not see God yet, but you feel connected to something vast and sublime and gives you a higher sense of joy. And then there's Brahmananda, that is the bliss of realization of Brahman, which is the very highest, which is transcendental, which is incomparable with any other joy. So here, again, that Samyamananda, the joy of self-control, that is what tapasya is meant to bring, the joy of self-mastery, that I'm not a slave of my senses. Why do many people fast and keep vigil on Shiva Ratri, the night of Shiva, usually in February or early March? It's to show that I'm not a slave of my appetites. I can go for a day, for 24 hours without eating. I can go without sleeping. Not forever, but for one night I can do that. And I will show that I have mastery over my body and mind by doing that. So those persons who, being fully identified with religious ostentation and egotism, showing off, and being possessed of the power to endure, which endure the suffering which results from their attachment to desired objects, and undertake severe austerity is not sanctioned in the scriptures. Again, this English construction also is very poor. I don't blame the translator. It's because a lot is packed into the Sanskrit that if you're going to make a simple translation in an English sentence without turning it into a paragraph, you have to use clumsy English, or you write a paragraph to explain it. So with those who are endowed with the strength to endure the suffering which comes from performing severe austerities, which they do because they have an intense attachment to objects of desire. So all of this is describing, again, the Rajasic person who's ostentatious, who is proud, who has intense desires to enjoy, and that intense desire to enjoy will lead them even to be severe in their austerities in order to get objects of enjoyment. So you see the strange psychology here, that they want to enjoy, and so go through great suffering in order to enjoy, because they recognize that the greatest enjoyments are not going to come without suffering. So, as we say in English, without pain there is no gain. There's a different way of saying it, but no pain, no gain. I think that's it. No pain, no gain. So you got to put yourself through the pain in order to get enjoyment. So no pain, no gain, that's a good statement. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not Rajasic. That's a recognition that unless you're willing to undergo some discipline and some temporary suffering, you can't get to something higher. But here, of course, the idea is I will undergo this severe austerity in order to please these lower deities, these lower celestial beings. They're not really deities, yakshas and gandharvas, etc., so that they will be pleased and they will give me objects of great enjoyment that otherwise can't be attained by ordinary means. And then this verse 6, which continues the sentence. Again, these two, Rajasic and Tamasic types of people are combined. And those who, being non-discriminating, that's an immediate indication that he's going to talk about Tamasic people. The Rajasic also don't have good discrimination because they think that they're going to get great enjoyment and that is going to be good enough. Well, let me back up for a moment before I go on, and because I wanted to say something on that point too. The idea is that experience has shown, and tradition, the experience which is contained within tradition. Traditions of society are the repositories of the experience of many people. And so, yes, sometimes traditions become burdens on society and on people when they've outlived their usefulness. But at one time they did have usefulness, and so traditions are the combined experience, the collected experience of many people over long periods of time. That's the real argument behind real conservatism as a philosophy. I'm not talking about a modern American conservatism or Brazilian conservatism or Indian conservatism or Chinese conservatism or what. Modern politics has distorted the meanings of everything. But the real value in conservatism as a genuine philosophical outlook is that the institutions and traditions of society are the collected wisdom of many people over time. And you can't go in and start tinkering with those things with your small little understanding and changing things because you think that society isn't good enough. Because these institutions, these practices, these observances, all of these things have come because of the collected wisdom of many people over time. That is, what we have in society is there for a reason. And people get some idea that, well, I want to change this, I want to change that. And they don't know what they're doing, and so they are just destroying the collected wisdom of society. So, of course, that's the argument for conservatism. There's an argument for true progressivism. Again, in modern times, conservative and progressive have become all mixed up with all kinds of things which belong to neither. But conservatism, of course, is in favor of preserving the observances and traditions of society. Progressivism is in favor of fixing the things that seem to be broken, and there are arguments for both. But all of this is background to say that these ideas that by doing these severe austerities, I will please these celestial beings and that they will give me wealth and the objects of my desire and all of that, that's founded on experience. So Sri Krishna is not saying that this doesn't work. No, he's not saying that at all. Nor is he saying that worshiping lower beings, demons and goblins and ghosts, that doesn't work. No, he wouldn't say that. Those things do work, and that's why society has preserved those traditions, because people who want those things go for them. And so people do it because it's been found over the ages that they actually work. You may argue about what that means and how it works, but those are the experience of society. And so that is part of the collected wisdom of society and traditions around the world. You find these distinctions that Krishna is making in other societies, religious traditions as well. So again, coming back to the verse 6, verse 5, which we did, that was describing Rajasic people who are willing to undergo severe austerities in order to get highly desired objects. So they're Rajasic, they're not Tamasic. They're Rajasic, even though they're punishing their body, they're doing it out of desire. And they are ostentatious and proud, all of those things which are characteristics of Rajas. And then verse 6, which we started, and who being non-discriminating, those who being non-discriminating, that is, those who are tamasic, because they're non-discriminating, emaciate the aggregate of elements in the body. That is, that's just a complicated way. We would never say that in English. It works in Sanskrit because the terms are understood in Sanskrit, at least by Sanskritists or anyone familiar with the Sanskrit language. They're understood, but it's saying things in a way we would never say in English, and so it makes no sense in English, but it makes good sense in Sanskrit. It just simply means who emaciate the body. So emaciate the aggregate of the elements in the body is a very complicated way in English, not in Sanskrit, but in English, of saying they emaciate themselves. That is, they starve themselves, they punish themselves, and verily emaciate me as well, I, Krishna, that is, I, God, who sit within the hearts of all beings. So they are torturing their bodies, but their body is a temple where I reside, as the deity residing within every body. I am the deity residing in the heart of every body. So they're torturing themselves because of their non-discrimination, but they're torturing me as well. And verily emaciate me as well who reside in the body. Know them to be possessed of a demonic conviction, or shraddha, or faith. Their faith is demonic. So though he doesn't separate it and doesn't spell it out in these two verses, obviously in verse 5 he's talking about the Rajasic people, verse 6 talking about Tamasic people. Both of them are demonic because Sattva is the nature of divine attributes. Rajas and Tamas. Rajas is much better than Tamas, but both of them are demonic. Compared to Sattva. So again, as Swami Vivekananda said often, for the many people, the large section of society, people who are immersed in tamas, the lowest of the attributes, first inspire in them rajas, activity, and then when they have become rajasic, then lift them higher to sattva. So everyone should be lifted from sattva, but why not go directly from tamas to sattva? Because tamas and sattva often look alike. They're polar opposites, but they often look alike. And so you find many people who seem to be very good people. They're very kind. They don't hurt anybody. They're always nice and everything. But actually, as one of my teachers in India used to say, they seem to be very good, but actually they're good for nothing. That is, they don't do harm to anybody, but it's because they don't even have strength enough to do harm, or they don't have boldness enough to do harm to anybody. They don't have the energy to do harm to anybody. They're just sort of just like bumps on a log, as we say in English. Good for nothing. They don't do harm, but they don't do any good either. And if you go to them for good, they can't do it because they're powerless. They're just weak and passive people. That's why Swamiji said that I see so many people who smile and seem so nice. It would be better if they were bad people, because their smile is just a lie on their face, because they're too lazy to be bad. It's not that they're really good. It's just that they've learned that by smiling and being nice all of the time, nobody bothers them. And all they want is to be left alone so they can go to sleep. So that is not virtue. So first stimulate rajas in people, and then when the rajas is there, then begin to stimulate sattva within them. So Swamiji, you find in his conversations with his disciple, Sharat Chandra Chakravarti, recorded in that beautiful text, Conversations with a Disciple. In Bengali, Swamiji Shishya Sangbad. Swamiji tells Sharat Chandra was a very fine devotee of Swamiji, a disciple of Swamiji, and he's the one who wrote down these conversations, a great treasure, one of my favorite books of all books. But there Swamiji saw that, first he saw that in India, that there was tamas masquerading as sattva. That is, people who had heard from childhood for centuries and centuries, for millennia actually, that this samsara is worthless, there's nothing to be had here. So they had given up on samsara prematurely. That is, not that they didn't have desires, but what's the use? What's the use? And so just sank into a state of tamas. And so he saw that Sharat Chandra, though he was a good person and a genuinely good person, but he saw that he was trying to stimulate rajas in him also. All Sharat Chandra wanted to do was to see Swamiji and talk about the scriptures. He was married, he had children, but he didn't want to do anything else. So Swamiji, you find at places in these conversations that went on over several years, Swamiji tells him that get up and do something. I can start a fashion. I have many high society friends in the United States and in England. I can start among them a fashion for the sari. And so export saris to the United States. Do something. I'll help you, but you do something. And he said, all I want to do is to read the scriptures and things. So Swamiji saw that not that he was tamasic in a fully tamasic way, because he had genuine goodness and a genuine love for the scriptures. But he saw that there was something that was also missing in him. He was trying to light some sort of fire in him. Get up and do something. That will be better than doing nothing. And so finally, Swamiji, in exasperation, not just in exasperation, but seeing that he's not accepting his ideas, says, at least when you sit for your meditation, then send out thoughts to the whole world. May all be filled with the thought of Brahman. May all realize Brahman. That is, he was trying to get him out of this concern only with his own liberation, which was sort of a weak, passive kind of affair for him, and wanted to get him to engage. And so if you want to engage in trying to start a business or doing something, then at least when you sit for meditation, think of the welfare of others. And he says that if you do that, if you send out thoughts, may all beings everywhere realize Brahman, may the consciousness of Brahman be awakened in all beings everywhere. He says, who knows, the spiritual consciousness of someone in America may be awakened by such thoughts of yours. So again, trying to give him the sense that by doing something, some good can come. Good to you and good to others as well. So go from tamas to rajas, and then from rajas to sattva. So that's verses 5 and 6. Both of them rajas and tamas, both being considered demonic. So now in verse 7, he changes to another aspect of sattva, rajas, and tamas. He says, Aharastvapi sarvasya trividho bhavati priyah yajnastapastatha dhanam tesham bhedamimam shrinu. So here he says, Aharatu api sarvasya trividho bhavati priya. Food also, which is dear to everyone, that also comes in three forms. That is sattva, rajas, and tamas. Sattvic food, rajasic food, and tamasic food. Categorized, as he will show here. He will show how they're categorized according to what they stimulate within a person, within a human being. So this doesn't apply to dogs, it doesn't apply to frogs, it doesn't apply to insects, it doesn't apply to snakes. This applies to people. Not that the same principle doesn't apply to them, but it's not the same things. The things that a dog eats that nourishes the dog and makes them healthy would make us sick or might be extremely tamasic. And so this is an analysis for human beings, not for others. The food that's appropriate to another species is not at all appropriate to us. So food, which is dear to all, is also of three types. And then yajnas tapas tatha dhanam tesham bhedam imam shrinu. Listen to the difference. The threefold is understood here. The threefold difference with regard to yajna, that is sacrifice or worship, tapas, austerity, tatha dhanam, as well as charity, giving gifts. Those also, there's a sattvic way of giving a gift, a rajasic way of giving a gift, and a tamasic way of giving a gift. So there's a sattvic way of performing a sacrifice, a religious rite. There's a rajasic way and there's a tamasic way. And so with tapasya, austerity. So the running translation goes, food also, which is dear to all, is of three kinds, according to the three gunas. And so also are sacrifices, austerity, and charity. Listen to this classification of them. So then we come to verse 8, which says, Ayus sattva balarogya sukha priti vivardhanaha rasya snigdha sthira hridya ahara sattvika priyaha. And so here he says, these are the foods which are sattvika priya, which are dear to sattvic people. That is, if you are sattvic, there are certain foods that you will naturally gravitate towards. If you are rajasic, you will gravitate towards other types of food, and tamasic towards other types of food. Why do you gravitate towards one another according to your state with regard to the gunas? Because the food that you are attracted to increases that or nourishes that guna which you are expressing. And so if you're sattvic, you're attracted to sattvic food because of the harmony between the two and because it stimulates more of the sattva. And so with the other two gunas. And so the foods which are dear to the sattvic people are ayu, sattva, balarogya, sukha, priti, vivardhana. That is, vivardhana, which augment. The foods which augment ayu, life. That is, they're healthy. The foods which augment health. Sattva, sattva here means the mind. They augment the mind. They strengthen the mind. Foods which help the mind. So they help life. That is the life force. They help you to live a long time. having a healthy body doesn't mean necessarily a healthy mind. That's a modern stupidity that people say that health is the greatest wealth and health is the most important thing. And if you have a healthy body, you'll have a healthy mind. Well, no, that's nonsense. And we see it all the time. You see people who are extremely strong and healthy, but who have a little light of intelligence within them. So you have to attend to both. Yes, health is good, but don't think that if you just attend to the body, that that's all you need to do. No, then you become a healthy piece of meat and nothing more than a healthy piece of meat, a healthy brute. That's not what we want. We want to have a strong mind in a healthy body, and you have to work on both. Working on the body doesn't strengthen the mind. So foods that augment the life, that is your health, which augment the mind, the sattva. Bala, strength, which brings strength. And strength doesn't mean just of the muscles. It doesn't, I'm not denying strength of the muscles, but strength means inner energy, the energy to do, the energy to accomplish. So food which gives you energy. So life, mind, energy, arogya, health. So ayu, of course, to make a distinction between ayu and arogya. Ayu means life, so that which lengthens your life and which strengthens health. And of course, those two are closely associated. They're the obverse and reverse of the same thing, but they're mentioned separately here. Sukha, that is, they make you feel contented, happy. That which makes you feel good. Priti and delight. So food which causes all of these things that augment life, which strengthen the mind, which bring energy or strength, which bring health, happiness, and delight, and which are rasyaha, which are succulent. Rasyaha means they're filled with rasa, filled with the juice. So it doesn't mean literally juicy foods. It means foods which are full of essence. That is, nourishing essence. So here it has nothing to do with the liquid, though ras generally means juice. But here ras also means, and here it means essence. So foods which are full of nourishing essence. Snigdha, which are oleaginous. That is, it means literally oily, but it doesn't mean he's not advocating greasy food. But food which is easy to eat and which is easy to digest and which moves through and out of the digestive tract easily without causing blockages anywhere along the way or indigestion anywhere along the way. And so that is the oleaginous, what he really means by oleaginous, snigdha. And stira, stira means steady, but here it means substantial. And hridya means agreeable. Agreeable and dear. So foods that augment life, firmness of mind, strength, health, happiness, and delight, and which are succulent, oleaginous, substantial, and agreeable, are dear to those in whom sattva predominates. Sattvika priyaha, dear to those who are sattvic. So one of the things that you find is that as the nature of your mind changes, going from tamasic to rajasic to sattvic, and this is a whole spectrum with the stages all along the way, that your taste in food also changes. Changes according to the stages of your mind's progression. When you become more sattvic, you delight in sattvic food. And then let me just do two more verses quickly, because time is running out, because they're in the same line of thought about food. So verse 9 says, Katvam lavanat I'm getting tongue-tied again today. Katvam lavanat ushna tikshna ruksha vidahinaha. Ahara rajasasyeshta dukkha shoka maya pradaha. So those foods which are katu, that is bitter. Now here, ati, the prefix ati is to be affixed to every one of these qualities. So it's not that bitter foods are bad, it's ati katu. That is excessively bitter, extremely bitter. Those foods which are extremely bitter, amla, extremely sour, lavana, extremely salty, ati ushna, extremely hot, and here it means hot in temperature, and tikshna, tikshna, that means extremely pungent, ati ruksha, which are extremely dry, so dry that it dries your mouth out as you eat it. Vidahinaha, which is burning. So foods that are excessively bitter, excessively sour, excessively salty, excessively hot, excessively pungent, excessively dry, and excessively burning. Ahara, food, dukkha shoka maya prada, and which give misery, sorrow, and disease. So foods which cause disease, that is, they cause indigestion and other digestive problems, which then later on cause even greater problems. It was thought in Ayurveda, the indigenous medical system of India, that all disease begins with the digestive tract. That it's problems in digestion which makes you susceptible to all disease. You may say that, well, what about catching COVID or a flu or a cold? That comes through the nasal passages or the oral cavity or something like that. Well, yeah, that's not denied. But they would say that what makes you subject to those disease germs is problems in the digestion. That if the digestion is perfectly strong, then you will be able to withstand all disease. Disease germs are around us all of the time, but why is it that suddenly we become susceptible to them? So the ancient Indian idea was that it's because of indigestion. So here, foods that are excessively bitter, sour, salty, hot, pungent, dry, and burning, that is, foods which are excessive in any sense, and which produce pain, sorrow, and disease, are dear to one in whom rajas predominates. Because rajas, again, is the quality of passion and action and reaction and strong likes and dislikes, extremes. And so they like extremes. They like food which is extreme tastes. They're not satisfied unless the food is like a hammer blow to the taste buds. Subtle taste isn't enough. You got to have something that hits you hard for it to be enjoyable. And then verse 10, yatayamam gatarasam puti paryushitam chayat uchishtam apita medhyam bhojanam tamasa priyam. So food which is yatayamam, which is half cooked, yatayamam, which is gata rasam. The rasam has gone. That is, the essence has gone. Again, it means literally its juice has gone. But here juice means the essence of it. So it's not talking about actual liquid, but so that which the nutritional value has departed from the food. It's not even worth eating. It's devoid of nutritional substance. That's been cooked out of it, or it's aged out of it, or whatever. So that food which is half cooked, which is lacking in essence, puti means putrid. That is, it's rotting. Food which is going bad. Paryushitam, which is stale. Paryushitam, that which is stale or which has been cooked too long, or which is stale, which has been left out for too long. Uchishtam api cha medyam. Uchishtam means the leftovers from what other people have eaten. That's something which is esoteric sounding to Westerners, but it's something which is considered extremely important in Indian civilization from ancient times. That food which has touched my mouth, that is called uchishta. It's become impure for anyone else. If it's touched my mouth, I can go ahead and eat it because that's the only way I get it from outside inside. But once it has touched my mouth, even externally, touched my lips, or touched my hand, which has touched my mouth. I'm in India, you're eating with your fingers, and so I'm eating with my fingers, and then I touch something, that has become impure too, because it has touched my mouth by coming in contact with my fingers, which have been in my mouth. And so anything which is uchishtam, that which has been eaten from by another, that is highly impure. What does that mean? The idea is, and Swami Vivekananda, who was the most rational of people and didn't like superstitions about food, but about this he was strict, and he even taught it in America. That he said his reasoning was, and you can argue against it or you can disbelieve it, that's okay. You don't have to believe anything. But his reasoning was that anything which, or that the mucous membrane within our body is extremely sensitive, and that tendencies are easily transmitted through the mucous membrane. And so my tendencies come into the food that I am eating. That by touching my mouth, my mucous membrane, it is infected, not for me, but as far as another person goes, infected by my tendencies. So if you eat it, then my tendencies are going to affect you also. I have enough trouble with my own karma. My own karma is complex enough. The last thing I need is to be taking on karma from other people, mixing my karma with the karma of other people. So that's the reason for being careful with what you eat, not to eat anything which has been touched by another. Here in the West, to many people, it's quite common. You're eating together, even if you're not from the same family, but friends who have gathered and you're all eating at a restaurant or something, you taste something and say, oh, this is really good, here, have some. And you pass your fork to somebody else, where your fork has been in your mouth and you've been eating on your plate and everything, and yet you stab something and give it to another person to bite off of your fork. No, that would never be done in India because, again, of this idea, which is considered a principle. Again, you don't have to accept that, but that's believed, and I believe it, having seen the effect of not having observed that. So that's also why a person takes the prasad of a great soul, why people would seek the prasad of Holy Mother or Sri Ramakrishna. That is, they would beg Holy Mother or Ramakrishna to leave them some prasad. So they would, when eating their food, they would first take a bite themselves and then give that to others to eat, because thereby you're getting their qualities, but their minds and bodies are so pure that it affects you to the good. It gives you great blessings. And so that's the whole idea of prasad. When we offer food to the deity, it's the same idea, that it has been touched by God and thereby it becomes pure. It's been touched by a great soul like Ramakrishna, Holy Mother of Vivekananda, or people like Ramana Maharshi, not an incarnation of God, but a great realized soul. Then anything touched by them becomes purifying to others. But for the rest of us, something touched by one of us to the mouth then becomes impure for others. So food which is half-cooked, lacking in essence, that is nutritional essence, putrid and stale, which is leftovers, is unfit for and which is unfit for sacrifice, is dear to those in whom tamas predominates. Amedhya. Amedhya means unfit for sacrifice. So anything which is of this nature is tamasic. And so tamasic people gravitate towards that type of food. They have no discrimination. The food that is too old, food that is lost all of its nutritional value, food which is stale, food which has become putrid, still without caring, they eat such food. So we'll stop here. I've gone a couple of minutes over time. But I wanted to get through verse 10 because it was connected. So next time we will move to verse 11, which begins the topic of sacrifice and how sacrifice is governed by the three gunas. And then we'll come to a very interesting discussion of gifts. Now is the season of Christmas, and so gift giving also. There's sattvic gift giving, rajasic, and tamasic gift giving. So let me give announcements, and then we will see if there's a. I'll try to take questions very briefly if there are any, or I'll try to deal with them very briefly and then close. So announcements. On Thursday we will have the usual Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna class. And on Sunday, I will speak on Holy Mother because her birthday is coming up. And as I have been announcing, we are not going to have Holy Mother's birthday celebration on December 22nd as we had originally planned. I've been looking for a way to keep the birthday celebrations regular and predictable from year to year. Because the Indian calendar, lunar calendar, it moves in regards to the Western calendar. And so I had decided to observe the birthdays on the solar day of their birth of Holy Mother and Vivekananda. But then you have the same problem that this year, the 22nd of December, when she was born according to the Western calendar, that's a Tuesday. And so Tuesday morning, people can't come because people are working. It's also just before Christmas. So people are also busy with Christmas things, with family, even Hindus in the West. And of course, we are involved in Christmas too because we celebrate Christmas, worship Christ for Christmas. So we're going to have Holy Mother's birth observance on January 1st, along with the Kalpataru Day, January 1st, so not on the 22nd. And then Christmas Eve, the 24th, we will have a celebration here, not in person, but we will broadcast it over YouTube with carol singing, with reading, with a short talk by me, and with arati, the waving of the lights. Between Christmas and New Year's, we will not have classes. The classes will be suspended between Christmas and New Year's, and then we'll begin again from January 2nd with the classes. So, let me make one other announcement that today, some of you know that we have been trying to buy a retreat property in Trinity, Texas, north of Houston. And so today we closed on the property. So the property now belongs to us. It is in our name, and we own it. And because we paid cash for the property, it doesn't have to go into escrow and wait for loans and everything to be verified and all of that. The property is ours now in Trinity, and so there it's 91 acres, 91 plus a little bit, and so there we plan to develop a retreat where in time we will have cabins and a pavilion and a place for programs for people to come and stay for a day, stay for a weekend, stay for a several-day program, etc. So that you will learn more about our plans shortly. We will send out information about them because we want everyone to participate. There was a beautiful way that the Benares Hindu University was established, a great university in Benares, the Benares Hindu University, BHU. The founder of that wanted it to be something that was identified with all of the people in India. So he went around collecting 1 rupee donations from people for the establishment of the university. And so we want also people to feel that this retreat is their own. And so people who have the money to do so, then substantial donations are welcome. Those who don't, a symbolic donation is good. But in time, we would like as many people to feel a sense of participation in the retreat as possible, both by participating in programs and giving according to what you have. If it's not much, a symbolic donation, and if you have more, then a more substantial donation is welcome. So questions. Tamas can be misunderstood for sattva. How do we differentiate the two? Yes, very good question, Shrish. Tamas, the way that it seems to be sattva is that tamas can see a tamasic person can seem to be very calm. They don't get angry. You can yell at them and they just smile. And they seem to be, they don't get ruffled, and but the difference is that tamas is lack of reaction, because one just doesn't have the strength or the energy or the interest in reacting. The tamas is passive, whereas sattva is highly refined. So sattva, the tranquility of a sattvic person, is that of a sage, where the mind is fully awake, but it's like the ocean. The mind is like the ocean. An elephant enters into the ocean and it doesn't disturb the ocean at all. It makes no difference to the ocean, whereas the elephant enters into a little pond and it splashes all of the water out. And so the sattvic mind is like an ocean. It's tranquil, but it's fully awake, and it's undisturbed because it's so big and so awake and so aware. Whereas the tamasic mind is small and it's passive. It seems to be tranquil because it's asleep. It's like the difference between a person who is highly focused on something, highly attentive to something that's going on, highly focused on it, and a person who's ready for a Sunday afternoon nap. Again, no criticism of Sunday afternoon naps. I like them myself. But that's not sattva, that's tamas. And so those are the main distinctions. So then, is there something about not eating leftovers? No, that some people have in India because they didn't have good question, Regina. Very good question. I'm glad you brought it up. Because in India, they didn't have refrigeration. And even now, lower middle class and poor people don't have refrigeration. It's a tropical country, so food goes bad very quickly. And so until recent times, even when I lived in India in the 70s and early 80s, very few people had refrigerators. And so you cooked food for the day, you ate it that day, and if you didn't eat it that day, you threw it out because it would spoil overnight. And there were only a few things that you would leave overnight. Like in Bengal, they had the practice of leaving rice which had been cooked and then left over. Not that people had eaten directly from, but which had still been left in the pot. They would soak that in water, and then that would be eaten the next day. It would have a slightly sour taste to it, but a very pleasant sour taste because there was a slight fermentation which began. So other than something like that, food was not left from day to day. And that's things like pickles, which could be preserved for a long time, or dried foods like raisins and so forth. But cooked food was eaten the same day. And so even now, many Hindus won't eat food that has been cooked the day before because that civilizational practice for thousands of years is still there. But with modern refrigeration, that has changed the necessity for that practice. With refrigeration, you can keep food for several days and still keep it in a good edible condition. And then how to offer food to God. Yes, that can be as simple as you like. You can make it complicated. I don't recommend that unless you have lots of time to do a puja and all of that. But if you cook in your house and you want to offer it to God, it's a wonderful thing to do. But if you want to offer it to God, there's several things that you should do to make it offerable. If out of ignorance you don't do these things, then God is forgiving. But if you know better and still do it, then that's not good. So what you should do if you're cooking and want to offer it to God before you eat it, then don't taste the food while you're cooking. If you forget whether you added salt or not, then you're not sure, then don't put it in after you've offered it, and then you taste it and find that it needs salt. You can always add salt later. So it's difficult at first because we're used to tasting food, to adjust the seasoning and things. But once you get used to it, it becomes second nature. So you don't taste the food while you're cooking it because you're going to offer it to God first. So you want it to be pure. And then you just you offer it to God simply with a prayer, aloud or mentally, however you want to do. Just here, please eat. And you see, Holy Mother, she would offer food every day to Sri Ramakrishna, and her offering was extremely simple. In fact, sometimes she would say, "Here, Lord, please eat, but eat quickly, because the train is coming and we have to catch the train. So please be quick." So just do it as simply as you like to do. But it's a wonderful practice. If you cook, keep the food pure until after you've offered it, and just offer it simply and ask for forgiveness if there are any flaws in the food that might have happened. That's all you need to do. And you can always offer cut fruit or nuts and dried fruit or sweets, things like that, that you can always offer if you just want to make a plate of something that doesn't require cooking also. That's an easy thing to do, but a very good thing to do. So, okay, so we'll stop here. I'll give a closing chant. Om Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutastastunvandi Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sangha Padakramo Panishadair Gayandiyam Samagaha Dhyanavastita Tadgatena Manasa Pashyandiyam Yogino Yasyandam Navidusura Surganad Devaya Tasmai Namaha. We bow to that Supreme Being whom Brahma and other gods praise with divine hymns, whose glories the singers of the Sama hymns sing through the Vedas and Upanishads, whom the yogis see with their minds absorbed in that through meditation, and whose end and beginning neither the gods nor the asuras know. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all.